When a horror icon appears in enough movies, they almost always become more ridiculous over time. At first, they might be a regular killer who can be injured or possibly killed, then in the next sequel, they are either doing the impossible or getting rebuilt as a futuristic cyborg. So today, I'm going through some of the most iconic horror villains ever made and identifying the exact movie where each one reached their strongest and most overpowered form. Now, I'm only counting feats shown or established in the movies, so I'm not including the comic books, novels, video games, or random crossover material that would make these characters even more absurd. Some of the choices are pretty obvious, but others are much more complicated because being the strongest does not always mean being physically unstoppable. For example, characters like Ghostface and Jigsaw, intelligence, preparation, and equipment are far more important than just kills and brute strength. So starting off with probably the easiest choice on this entire list is Jason Voorhees is unquestionably at his strongest in Jason X. Now, Jason was already superhuman before being sent into space. At the beginning of the movie, the government has him imprisoned because every attempt to execute him has failed. The scientists eventually decide that the only practical solution is to freeze him because apparently murdering Jason Voorhees is more difficult than preserving his body for several hundred years. Even before receiving his upgrade, this version of Jason demonstrates ridiculous strength. He survives being frozen for over 400 years. He overpowers KM-14, better known as KM, an advanced combat android specifically upgraded to fight him. Although she initially destroys him with futuristic weapons, she shoots off one of his arms, blasts apart his leg, and eventually blows away a massive portion of his body. For almost any other version of Jason, that would at least temporarily end the movie. Instead, his destroyed body falls onto a medical station filled with regenerative nanotechnology. The machine detects his injuries and begins rebuilding him. But because so much organic tissue is missing, it uses advanced metal and synthetic material to complete the process. This creates Uber Jason. This version of Jason is no longer merely an undead killer. He is an undead killer covered in futuristic cybernetic armor. The movie immediately establishes the difference when KM attacks him again. Before the transformation, her weapons tore Jason apart. After the transformation, he absorbs her attacks without suffering any meaningful damage. He then punches her head clean off with one strike, proving that his strength has also increased. Uber Jason also survives an enormous explosion aboard the ship, gets pulled into the vacuum of space, and continues functioning without oxygen. Now, with all that being said, there really is no serious competition here. Jason X is the strongest movie of Jason Voorhees by an enormous margin. Michael Myers, Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This version of Michael is more of a controversial choice because there are several different timelines and each one treats his supernatural nature differently. Michael in Halloween Kills has one of the most impressive killing sprees, but the strongest overall version is Michael from Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is the version directly connected to The Curse of Thorn. In this timeline, Michael is not simply a mentally disturbed human being who refuses to die. He has been influenced by an ancient supernatural force that compels him to murder his family. Now, the movie's mythology is a little bit messy, especially because the theatrical version and the producer's cut tell different versions of this story. But both versions present Michael as something beyond a normal man. Michael enters this movie after already surviving the events of the previous films. During Halloween 4, he is shot repeatedly by police officers, falls into a mine shaft, and is caught in an explosion. He remains inactive for a while, but he eventually returns, and by Halloween 6, he has been killing and surviving supposedly fatal injuries for decades. His strength in this movie is absurd. He lifts people effortlessly, throws victims across rooms, and kills John Strode by pinning him against an electrical box. In the theatrical cut, the electrical surge becomes so powerful that John's head explodes, but Michael remains close to the current and is completely unaffected. His durability is even more impressive during the final sequence at Smith's Grove. Tommy Doyle injects Michael with chemicals and then repeatedly beats him in the head with a metal pipe. Michael takes so much damage that green fluid begins pouring from his mask, and he eventually collapses. However, when Loomis returns, Michael's body has disappeared. His mask is left behind, but Michael himself is gone, proving that even this beating did not permanently stop him. The producer's cut takes this supernatural connection even further. Tommy uses runes and symbols associated with Thorn to temporarily immobilize him. That suggests that physical attacks may not even be the most effective method of defeating this version of Michael Myers. His supernatural curse has to be understood and manipulated before anyone can really control him. That is what separates Halloween 6 Michael from the version in Halloween Kills. For Ghostface, we have Roman Bridger in Scream 3. Ghostface is pretty difficult because Ghostface is not just one person. Every movie introduces a different killer or group of killers underneath the costume, and all of them are normal people who can be killed. Roman's most impressive accomplishment is that he operates alone. Billy Loomis had Stu Macher, Miss Loomis had Mickey, and so on and so forth. Roman commits his entire massacre without a Ghostface partner handling phone calls or attacking victims in another location. He manipulates an entire movie production, kills the cast members of Stab 3, and controls the investigation while pretending to be an innocent director. He even fakes his own death to remove suspicion from himself. Roman also has one of the best pieces of equipment ever used by a Ghostface, a voice changer capable of perfectly recreating the voices of other people. Now, most Ghostfaces can only disguise themselves using the traditional Roger L. Jackson voice. Roman can imitate specific victims and family members, allowing him to manipulate people with information that appears to come from someone they trust. Physically, Roman is also one of the toughest Ghostface. He attacks several people in rapid succession, survives fights with multiple members of the original group, and wears a bulletproof vest beneath his Ghostface costume. During his final battle with Sidney, he proves that he can endure an extended hand-to-hand fight. Sidney stabs him, shoots him, and forces him to absorb an incredible amount of punishment for a normal human being. He is then only permanently killed when Dewey shoots him in the head. Roman is also responsible for being the original chain of events in the Scream franchise. He located Billy Loomis, showed him evidence of his father's affair with Maureen Prescott, and encouraged him to murder her. Roman did not personally plan every future Ghostface massacre, but his manipulation helped create the conditions that produced the first movie. Now, for a villain who is usually just a human being in a costume, Roman came the closest to feeling like an unstoppable slasher in the Scream franchise. Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. The Dream Master. Freddy's strength changes depending on how much fear and how many souls he has accumulated. In the first movie, he is dangerous, but Nancy can weaken him by refusing to give him power. But by the fourth movie, Freddy has returned from defeat and begins collecting souls at alarming rates. He first eliminates the remaining Dream Warriors, and these were not ordinary teenagers. Christian, Kincaid, and Joey had already fought Freddy and developed special abilities within their dreams. Kincaid possesses superhuman strength. Joey can weaponize his voice, and Christian can pull other people into dreams. But Freddy destroys all three of them. He traps Kincaid in a junkyard and kills him despite his enhanced strength. He then tricks Joey by using one of his greatest weaknesses and then drowns him inside his own waterbed. He eventually kills Christian and absorbs her soul, but before dying, she transfers her ability to Alice. This creates an incredibly dangerous situation. Alice then begins pulling her friends into Freddy's world, allowing him to kill them one at a time. Every death makes Freddy stronger while also transferring pieces of the victim's abilities and personalities to Alice. Freddy demonstrates near total control over reality inside Dream. He catches Alice and Dan inside a repeating time loop, forcing them to experience the same section of road without realizing they are asleep. That time loop sequence is especially important because it demonstrates that Freddy does not merely create visual illusions. He can manipulate perception, time, space, and the structure of an entire dream. His body also contains the souls he has collected. During the final battle, the faces of his victims physically emerge from his chest. Freddy is effectively using murdered souls as a source of power, which explains why he becomes increasingly difficult to defeat. Other movies make Freddy more comedic and give him increasingly ridiculous abilities, but the Dream Master presents the best combination of power, control, and intelligence that Freddy has ever demonstrated. Chucky, Cult of Chucky. Chucky's strongest version appears in Cult of Chucky, and it is not because one individual doll becomes physically stronger, it is because Chucky discovers how to split his soul. Originally, Charles Lee Ray transferred his entire soul into one good guy doll. This gave him the advantage of appearing harmless, but it also created one massive weakness. If somebody destroyed that body before he transferred himself again, Chucky could be defeated. Cult of Chucky removes that weakness completely. Chucky discovers a voodoo spell that allows him to place pieces of his soul into multiple bodies without abandoning his current one. Suddenly, there is no longer one Chucky. This completely changes how anyone has to fight him. Destroying one doll accomplishes almost nothing because another Chucky may already be active somewhere else. A victim can believe they have finally killed him, only for a second doll to walk into the room. The greatest demonstration of this ability comes when Chucky possesses Pierce. He does not need to abandon every doll to do it. A portion of his soul enters Pierce's body, allowing Charles Lee Ray to operate as a human again while his other fragments remain alive. That gives Chucky access to everything he lacked as a doll. He has a full-sized human body, can move through society without immediately attracting attention, and can still maintain multiple backup vessels. Even better for Chucky, Tiffany has also learned how to transfer souls and occupy different bodies, and by the end of the movie, Chucky is no longer an isolated killer constantly searching for one permanent human form. He has multiple dolls, a human host, and an ally who understands the same supernatural system. Art the Clown from Terrifier 3. Art originally appeared to be human. He could be injured, and at the end of the first Terrifier, he shoots himself in the head rather than allowing the police to capture him. However, his body later reanimates in the morgue, revealing that something supernatural has intervened. In Terrifier 2, Art survives gunshots, stabbings, and other enormous injuries before Sienna finally decapitates him with her magical sword. Terrifier 3 begins showing us how ridiculous his resurrection has become. Art's headless body reanimates on its own, attacks a police officer, and travels to reunite with his newly reborn head. He then enters a state of hibernation for 5 years before awakening and immediately returning to murder. Art also has something most slashers never receive: supernatural backup. Victoria is possessed by the demonic entity associated with the little pale girl. She later works alongside Art, and she can manipulate victims, participate in rituals, and also kill alongside Art the Clown. And this is the first movie we actually see Art's demon handler actually working alongside him. And who knows, since Terrifier franchise is not done yet, maybe Terrifier 4 could be his strongest form. But for right now, Terrifier 3 is the strongest form of Art the Clown. Jigsaw, Mark Hoffman in Saw 6. Finally, we have Jigsaw, and this requires a slight distinction. If we are only talking about John Kramer himself, his most powerful movie is arguably Saw 3. Even while dying from cancer, John controls an enormous interconnected game involving Jeff, Lynn, Amanda, and several other victims. However, John is physically weaker than ever in that movie. If we are looking for the most overpowered version of the person operating as Jigsaw, the answer is Mark Hoffman from Saw 6. Hoffman possesses almost all of John Kramer's advantages without John's physical limitations. He understands trap construction, psychological manipulation, and investigative procedure. Because he is a police detective, he also has access to evidence, case information, and crime scenes. By Saw 6, Hoffman is operating the games largely on his own. He is also one of the most physically capable characters in the franchise. When his identity is exposed, he murders multiple people inside the police station and attempts to erase the evidence connecting him to the Jigsaw murders. And at the end of the movie, Jill Tuck places Hoffman in the reverse bear trap and leaves him without a key. This is supposed to be a permanent execution, not a survivable test, but Hoffman still escapes. That scene represents why Hoffman is the most overpowered Jigsaw. Amanda had physical ability, but her emotions made her unstable, and that is why I think Mark Hoffman is the best Jigsaw. And with all that being said, let me know which characters you think became the most overpowered and whether there are any versions you would replace from this list. Because depending on whether we judge them through strength, durability, or supernatural abilities, this ranking can completely change. And also, let me know if you guys would like to see a part 2 of other horror villains. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching.